This is part 2 of the reading of the park. Sorry I had to shut it off. My video will only record for about 40 minutes or so. So, we left off the story of part 1 that I was reading where I don't want to give away too much in case you didn't see part 1, so go back and see part 1. David laughed as he said, "Wow, everything is on now, and there's no one here but us. We can do everything for free and do whatever we want. Let's go." And the other two boys lit up and let out a "Woo-hoo! Yes!" as they followed their fearless leader. So now here's the YouTube part 2 of the park. The next thing that caught the boys' eyes was the House o' Fun. Jeremy read the sign, "Susie's Playhouse o' Fun." "Who is Susie?" he asked. David chuckled, "Ha ha! Let's find out!" Ronnie said, "This will be wicked without paying and without other people in there." David pushed Jeremy out of the way as he joshed, "I'm first in line." While still en route to the park, going back to the men now, okay? While still en route to the park, the engineers tried to grasp what John was saying. They began to brainstorm what they could possibly do from a mathematical, scientific, and mechanical point of view. They soon realized that in dealing with this park, they needed more of a biological and psychological vantage point. Dr. Hatfield came to the conclusion, "We really need a doctor, a medical doctor." Mr. Scalp agreed. "John, I think he's right. What we really need is to get a mental health specialist involved." Mr. Goldberg, the lawyer, said, "Thank God we don't have to involve the police department." John agreed, "Yes, or the SWAT team." "Mr. Hansen," Mr. Wiggles addressed John, "tell us more." The seats in the limo faced each other. Mr. Scalp and Dr. Hatfield leaned forward. John and Mr. Goldberg were on one side, and the three specialists on the other side. Mr. Scalp said, "The more we know, the better we may be able to shut this mother down." John agreed reluctantly. Dr. Hatfield grilled John. "Come on, Mr. Hansen. Only you can tell us how to beat this." John Hansen hid his face in his hands, almost mumbling, "You're going to think I'm insane." "Try us," replied Mr. Scalp. Dr. Hatfield thought, "We already know he's insane. What more could he tell us that is so unbelievable?" He decided to keep that thought to himself in hopes that this unbridled madman would be willing to terminate this dangerous and possibly deadly mechanical menace that should have never been given a chance to live in the first place. John looked at his lawyer and again took a dreadful deep breath before he began to confess what he created. "There are so many factors to consider. The park runs like you and I. I engineered her to completely run just like a human body. But," he began to weep, "but, as I already informed you, she has lost her mind. She is completely unstable now. I wish I would have just adjusted her herb level, maybe less St. John's wort, or, I don't know, more melatonin. I think I pushed her performance level too much while we were developing, nursing, and nurturing her." Mr. Hansen became increasingly more and more emotional. I incubated that park from a small synthetic micro machine to the massive place it is now. She was supposed to grow into a place that was different and entertaining and, well, fun. He broke down unconsolable. They couldn't console him. Susie was just getting into a full mood swing while her creator was crying like a baby. The house of fun was all lit up and blaring with wild music. It wasn't one of those cheap, contrived mazes that sits on the back of a semi-truck. "This is so unlike any funhouse I've ever been in," exclaimed Jeremy. "You scared, Jeremy?" Ron taunted as he looked at Dave for approval. Jeremy ran up the stairs and shoved Ron and then Dave out of the way, shouting, "I'll show you who's scared. Yo mama!" David fought back, trying to grab his shirt. The boys were having fun even before they entered. After reaching the top of the spiral staircase, Jeremy stopped and pointed out that the digital scrolling sign that read, "Come on, boys, let's play." Jeremy demanded that his friends read it. Yeah, so what? Let me in." David was ready to fight. Jeremy had never really challenged Dave, but questioned, well, why is it typed out boys rather than boys and girls or ladies and gentlemen? How does it know that it's just us and that we're alone? David had an answer for everything. "You're right, Jeremy. It should say ladies and germs to include you two." Ha ha! He shuffled past Jeremy. Ron was right on his tail and spewed out, "Yeah, ha ha! Amusing, Jerry, you little puppy." Jeremy followed, but as he was going in, he asked again, "Why, how could it say just boys?" Once the three boys were past the sign, it scrolled a new message. "Enjoy. Enter at your own risk, my new boy toys." The first part of the house was an arrangement of smoke and mirrors. Jeremy still thought to himself that something just wasn't right. How and why was all this stuff in the park on? Ron was still in the chase after David. Jeremy was held back a little and shouted, "Hey guys! Guys! David! Ron! Hey you guys! Wait up!" Hearing the desperation in his friend's voice, David turned. "What?" Ron laughed. "I'm in second place." David just shook his head and thought about how everything was a competition. It wasn't long until he shook Ron off his tail, and all three of them were separated. Although they were all in the same exact sector, they felt wholly lost and alone. Ron shouted over the music, "Dave! Dave! David!" Dave remained silent to increase his friend's fear. They no longer heard Jeremy. Ron tried to play off David's sensitive side. "Dave, I'm worried about Jeremy. I think he's hurt." Ron waited. "Bah ha ha ha!" Jeremy blasted as he snuck up from behind David. "You puppy!" were the only words David could muster. Jeremy was so proud of himself for being able to sucker his bravest friend into that one. Ron found himself lost in the smoke. He called out, "I heard you guys! Is Jeremy okay? I am kinda scared for him. David?" When the smoke cleared, he thought he had found his way out. He made a run for it down the long hallway. Wham! Ron ran into another wall of glass. The wall shook a little. As he was getting up to his feet and rubbing his nose, he noticed a mirror on the other side of the glass, moving its angle. "Hey!" he yelled. "Hey, David and Jeremy! You guys! The mirrors moved just right to confuse the high thrill seeker. This is great, huh guys? This is really fun, huh, guys? He started to become desperately concerned. He felt alone and was now wondering why they had played around so much, trying to get in first. He began to think that maybe Jeremy was at least partially right. He considered praying, like his grandmother once taught him. He fell to his knees and started the only prayer that he could think of. He recited, "God is great, God is good, let us thank Him for our food." No, that won't work in here. Another prayer came to his mind. He stood up and then re-knelt as if he had to reset. His voice was shaking. Now I lay me down to sleep. Oh, crap. I'm sorry, God. Ron stood up and then once again dropped to his knees in one final attempt. "If you get me out of this alive, God, I promise my friends and we will stop and think more before we act on our impulses. And I'll brush my teeth every night and not lie to my mom anymore when I tell her I've already did it when I actually haven't brushed them in like a month. And the same thing with the shower. Sometimes I just brush or run the brush and the soap under the water to fool her. 'Cause you're God, and you are God, and you are awesome in everything." As Ron continued his emergency call, the other two were yelling and laughing and even calling, "Ron! Ronnie! Yo, Ron! Where are you?" Then they began to taunt him a little bit. "We're going to find you. We are coming to get you." Then a loud voice that sounded like a roaring demon repeated the phrase, "We are coming to get you." Dave said, "Cool. It sampled and processed our voices." Then the voice made it personal. "I am coming to get you, you. There was an eerie echo at the end of the threat. Jeremy thought, how clever. That's a pretty neat effect. He was trying to convince himself. The voice made Ron stop his ploy for a moment. He then expressed words from deep down within as he closed his eyes tighter, grasped his hands harder, and bowed even more, crying out loud, "Oh, dear God, dear God, I certainly hope that wasn't your voice. Please get me out of this place." Suddenly, they all heard the voice of a sweet little girl overpowering the music. She said, "This is Susie. Are you having fun? Boy, I surely am. I really, truly, surely, Susie am. Hee hee. Thanks for coming in to play house with me. But this isn't just any house." Then the voice changed into a female demon. "This is my house! Ha 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 ha!" The deafening evil laugh haunted them. Ron was now in tears, face planted on the floor, burying his head with his arms. David laughed, letting out his normal reaction to strange and bizarre happenings. "This is awesome! Did you hear that, Jeremy?" Jeremy was completely creeped out. The music shut off. It was now extremely silent. David began to speak. "That seems odd." Jeremy said, "That seems odd?" The voice interrupted. This time, they heard the little girl mixed with the adult female demon. "I don't mean to interrupt, but I bet I'll have more fun with you than you'll have with me, Ron. Jeremy asked David, did it just say Ron or run? David answered Jeremy, no, it said on. Susie clarified, no, I said Ron, R-O-N. Yep, it said Ron, David admitted. Ron couldn't bring himself to look up. He felt his bladder getting weak. The wall shifted, hurting David and Jeremy in the direction Susie wanted them to go. Hey, what's going on? David protested. We'll be crushed, yelped Jeremy. Ron, still prostrate on the floor, was beginning to slide sideways, then backwards, then forward, until he and the other boys found themselves reunited in one room, just big enough for the three of them. Ronnie! The two shouted in unison. He was still having trouble getting up. His thoughts were on a kid that he had bullied in their neighborhood. He had a flashback to little Ricky that he scared so bad he made him pee his pants. That's when Ron himself felt the warm liquid invading his groin area. Susie's voice beckoned. Ha ha! Having fun, Ron? Oh my! You're warm. Do you like me, Ron? Dave joined in the tease. Ronnie's got a girlfriend. Ha ha! Jeremy elbowed Dave. Dave didn't know when to stop. If you like her so much, why don't you marry her? Ha 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 ha! Jeremy shoved him up against one of the uncomfortably tight walls. Jeremy managed to remain standing, but Dave wasn't used to being pushed around. He slipped, fell on top of Ron's body, then rolled onto the floor. He cringed. It's wet! Ron finally got up. Man, am I glad to see you puppies, he said with joy, gratitude, and laughter. David noticed Ron's pants were wet. He unleashed his insult. Wait, did you piss your pants? Jeremy jumped in defense. No, of course he didn't piss his pants, man. Come on, the floor is wet. Obviously, that's how he got his pants wet there. Just like you. Look at yours. You're all wet down the outside of your jeans there, too. Look at that. What a shame. Plus, Ronnie's the one that jumped into the water to try and save your life earlier. We thought you were in the pool drowning. That was pretty awesome, right? You made an epic landing too, Dave. Bruh. Killer. Huh, Ron? Ron looked at Jeremy, knowing his friend knew why their pants were really wet. Jeremy just winked at Ronnie. David had bronze, but not much brains. He possessed great looks and outward muscles, but fell short when it came to scholastic abilities and brain power. Nevertheless, he was still their friend, and he needed their friendship too. They both helped Dave back up onto his feet. Things were very still, as well as extremely quiet again. The silence was as disturbing as the loudness. David asked, Does it smell like pee in here to you guys? Ron let out a nervous chuckle, avoiding the question. And by the way, I would never, ever marry anybody named Susie. The whole room began to shake. Jeremy said, I think you upset her. Dave barked. You guys are such little puppies. Puke, puppies. Puke, puke. He tried to command. Puke up all over Susie. She'll like it. The room shook side to side and then up and down. David questioned, How are they doing that? Susie answered Dave, I can do all kinds of things. Fun things, David. Jeremy's inquirer clarified, How is she doing that? Ron stammered, She knows your name too, Dave. Dave was really perplexed. The only thing he could get out was, What? Really? What the what? Jeremy was shocked that Dave had not resorted to using swear words by now, especially under the severity of their circumstances and the fact that there were no adults around that could come down on them based on certain words they decided to use. Jeremy himself was about to use words that he knew wouldn't be offensive to his friends, but some adults would find and deem inappropriate for kids to say. All three of them were not sure what was going on, what to do, or what to say. Just when it seemed that everything had stopped, the loud music blared on again. They covered their ears and searched for a rational reason. Jeremy thought, maybe we're setting off tripwires or triggers. Maybe there's a built-in computer that heard us using our names. Trying to find the right words to express himself, Jeremy raised his voice. I'm telling you guys, this is mucked up. The whole situation is just not norm... Susie said, Shut up, Jeremy, you puppy! That was one of Dave's original sayings. He had developed completely on his own. Adults didn't wash his mouth out with soap when he used the slang term puppy like they did when using other words. Susie spoke some more. You're my new friends, David, Ronald, and Jeremy. Or should I call you Dave, Ronnie, and Jerry, you posers? Jeremy said, She knows our slang and our nicknames? Susie said, I like little boys so much more than little girls. You scare easier. The boys were beginning to breathe irregularly. Their adrenaline levels rose, and so did Susie's. They noticed their legs and arms began to shake and quiver out of control, making it hard to stand. Jeremy's legs buckled, taking him to the ground. He felt the wet floor soaking into the knees of his pants. He tried reciting affirmations he learned in Sunday school. Our Father, which art in heaven. Dave said, Are you praying? Ignoring Dave, Jeremy continued, The Lord is my shepherd. Ron said, That's not a bad idea, Dave, especially when in a crisis. Then Ron complained, I can't move, becoming paralyzed in fear. David tried to encourage them. Come on, dogs, be strong. We got this. She crackled. I am Susie. I know who and what you are. You're not dogs. You're puppies. Dave said, Shut up, you witch. The whole room turned upside down, then right side up again as the boys heard Susie cackle some more. Don't throw up, boys. I'm not a witch, but I'm a bit, what do you call it? I don't like germs. David shouted, Germaphobe. Susie said, Don't call me that. The room flipped again. Jeremy begged, Stop upsetting her. David said, This is bull crazy. Susie replied, Don't call me crazy. Ron tried to get the words out. I don't know, Dave. It seems pretty legit. Long cords came out from the side of the walls and grabbed David and Ron's legs, pulling them off their feet. They were forced to join Jeremy on the floor. David objected. Hey, this isn't water down here. It's pee. Ron got nervous that Dave was going to tease him relentlessly. However, David then said, This funhouse put urine on the floor. Oh, good. He's blaming the house, thought Ron. We gotta get out of here, yelled Dave. Susie said, Don't leave, boys. You can't leave now. I'm not done. You're so much fun. I could hurt you if I wanted to, And I can't go to jail. I'm a machine. You boys could go to juvenile jail, but, boys, you're just boys being boys. I think I'll teach you a lesson on trespassing." The room did a waving motion as if the boys were being treated like a slinky. "I could hurt you, but I won't hurt you or harm you. But you got to play nice. You've got to be nice to me. Hey, Dave, Dave, David, Davy!" She waited for him to answer. He finally did. Yeah? "I want you to know, I heard what you said earlier about what would be done if you were caught by some old fart." Susie made a fart sound. "I won't torture, torch, or torment you, but I will teach you. I'm very sensitive." David tried to say what he thought a grown macho man would say. "Oh, she's sensitive Susie." He always tried to make light of the situation by puffing up his chest and trying to play the bad boy. Susie responded, "Ha, ha, ha. David, you want all of us to laugh out loud? Okay, LOL. Here, let me help." The room began to fill with laughing gas. It took over the minds of the boys. All their fears disappeared along with all of their other clear thinking. The boys just found themselves laughing uncontrollably, banging into the walls that were slowly retracting and expanding outward. Rather than constricting and crushing the boys, Susie was allowing them more space to fumble around in. She even added a wobbling effect to her voice to disorient them even more as she said in a sing-song voice, "I'll give them enough rope to hang themselves. Rock-a-bye, bye-bye, baby, in my playhouse." Ron said, "My mom used to sing this to me." He was appalled that he had admitted that out loud. Susie laughed and taunted, "Sometimes you have to experience some things for yourself and learn the hard way." She made her voice sound especially funny. It was also as if she had been sucking on helium. The boys breathed in deep. The next thing they knew, they had breathed in helium along with the laughing gas. David said, "This is crazy." The other boys laughed in a high-pitched voice. Jeremy spoke out, "You? Oh, you sound like Mickey Mouse." Ron said, So do you, Jeremy." "Do I sound like that? Oh, wait, I'm hearing myself. I do sound like that. That's weird." Jeremy said, "I think it's the air around us that we're breathing that's making us." David said, "You want some more, Ron? Breathe deep. It sounds like I just called you a moron, Ron." The more they stumbled, the more they laughed. The voice asked, "Do you want out, boys?" The kids were so high they actually answered all together, "Sure, why not?" Jeremy slurred his speech. Okay. Ron shuddered. "Okay, Susie, I think I love you." David tried to think straight enough to talk and just got out, "That would be awesome." The smoke blew away, the walls dropped, and the boys found themselves at the end of a huge tunnel that had a black and white spiral painted in it. As if that wasn't enough, it began to spin. Meanwhile, back in the limo, as the limo approached the park, John and the other men saw the lights from a distance. The limo finally pulled up in front of the park entrance, and there was already a small crowd of young people gathered there, mostly boys. Before anyone got out, John's lawyer said, "Wait a minute, guys. Let me handle this." He opened the door and stepped out to address the children. He thought it best to dumb it down. He spoke slower and louder than when he was speaking to adults. "Okay, kids, I'm not sure why you're gathered here, but this place is off limits, out of bounds. The park is being tested for safety. Everything is running so that they can double check everything, but it is not open. You are all out of bounds." One of the boys said, "But sir, our friends are in there." An older boy next to him elbowed him and whispered, "Shut up, Daniel." Mr. Goldberg looked at the smaller boy and asked, "What did you say, little boy?" The older one stepped forward. "Oh, nothing, sir. We just heard the loud music and saw things moving, so we came by to check it out. We didn't go inside or anything. I mean, no one is in there." Mr. Hanson stepped out the other side of the limo. Having heard the young boy, he asked, "Please, boys, if someone, a friend, a true friend, or anybody is in there, we need to know, because they—" John wondered if he should say anything more. He looked at his lawyer and knew he'd regret this, but John finished with, "Boys, they could get seriously hurt. If you can just let us know, then we can make sure that your friends are okay. They won't be in any trouble, just as none of you are in harm's way or in any trouble or anything. Boys," he pleaded, "boys, please let us know what you know." Then one of the few girls in the crowd spoke up. "David Spencer, Ronnie Moore, and I think Jerry or Jeremy McCoy. Those 3 boys planned on going in there tonight." Another older boy confirmed, "Yeah, they did. They wanted me to go too, but I was too scared. But I don't know, none of us know how they turned everything on. They said they were just going in to skate down the old water slides." John's eyes began to swell with tears. He whispered a short prayer, "Oh, dear Lord Jesus, help." He thanked the kids gathered there and asked if they would please go home because the police would be coming around. He tried to convince them that they would not want to get caught up in all of this. Mr. Goldberg chimed in, "That's all we need to know from you boys and girls. Thank you. Run along. You don't want to get, caught up into any trouble or anything. Trespassing is a serious charge, and if you're around, well, who knows, you might be called into the police department or the FBI, or someone may want to blame you for going against the law. Now, go on, get going." Never had a lawyer sounded so immature and unsure of himself. Dr. Hatfield stepped out of the car and put his hand on Mr. Goldberg's shoulder, sarcastically commending him. "Nice job, Mr. Lawyer. Big words, too. That was smooth." Mr. Wiggins jumped out and said, "It sounds like the park is full of people." Dr. Hatfield turned, and before John could explain, he answered, "Ambiance. Sometimes places use canned music or pre-taped music. even sound effects. It makes it more. He looked at John, who swallowed hard and finished the statement. More fun and lively. Mr. Scalp ran up to the front gates, yelling, "They are huge! How do we get in?" John snapped out of his hypnotic self-pity. "Oh, yes, here, I have an access card." As John approached the gates, he got out a card from his hip pocket. He swiped it, but nothing happened. He swiped it again, still nothing. He became increasingly nervous. With the third and fourth swipe, the gates were still not responding. John's lawyer said, "John, I know you're worried, but speaking from a lawyer's standpoint, you're safe. If something happens to those boys while they are in the park gates, you cannot be held liable." John spouted back, "Mr. Goldberg, I'm not worried about what happens to me. Our concern should be for the boys and the park." Dr. Hatfield asked, "Is there a manual override?" John looked down at the ground and nodded no in shame. They could barely hear him mumble, "Everything we built runs off the main brain of the entire park." Mr. Scalp looked up at the gate. Then his eyes scanned the gigantic walls surrounding the park. He couldn't see where it ended. He said, "This is one big monster. But those boys got in, so there must be an opening." John remembered he used to have a security guard check the perimeter to make sure the gates, walls, and fences were secure. He recalled, "There is one area that is just chain-linked fence." "Let's get there," said the lawyer. John agreed. "We have to get back in the car, drive around the east side, then walk a little bit, over some small hills, through a field, and—" Mr. Wiggins shouted, "Let's just go!" They followed his command. In the meanwhile, inside Susie's House of Fun, the boys knew they had to get through that tunnel to get out. As the tunnel spun, the boys flipped around out of control. The gas they had inhaled was wearing off. David yelled, "What the heck, man?" He was angry that he had no control over the situation and fought his way to reach the end. He heard Susie say, "I'm not a man." When David conquered the tunnel, the other boys were close enough for him to grab Ron by the arm and Jeremy by the leg. He leaned back, pulling them out. Simultaneously, the owner of the park was holding up the fence and pulling in those who were with him. He insisted they help him by crawling in. The other men were fairly large, but they knew they needed to get in there and save those boys and shut down the park. "Come on, Mr. Goldberg," John insisted. The lawyer, in his three-piece suit, reluctantly got down on the ground and scraped across the gravel, making his way into the park. Once they all forced themselves under the chain-linked fence, John had to show the men where the main brain was. However, he was also worried about the boys, their immediate danger, and what damage they may be bringing upon Susie. He turned to his lawyer. "James." This was the first time John called his lawyer by his first name. He went on, "I need you to find those boys." John and the three consultants ran off in a desperate scurry. His lawyer stood there in a daze. He still couldn't believe what was happening. He looked down at his now ruined $600 suit. He felt sick and even developed a little hatred toward the boys that were trespassing. He mumbled to himself, "They are breaking the law, They deserve anything bad that's coming their way, he scoffed to himself as he tried to brush himself off and move toward the water slides. Dave was laying exhausted on the cold metal grid floor just outside the spinning tunnel. Ron jumped up, breathing heavy. Jeremy got up slowly, dusted off the bits and pieces of stuff that collected in the tunnel. Ron was the first to speak. "We almost didn't make it. We almost died in there." Jeremy thanked David. "Yeah, we would have if you didn't get a hold of us, Dave." Dave was too confused and tired to talk or express himself in any other way. He just laid there. The laughing gas had worn off, and they were now becoming paranoid. The lawyer began to hear shouts, but it was the pre-recorded ambience soundtrack. Not sure where to go, he began to run in the direction of the cries. Susie spoke calmly to the boys, using her innocent little girl voice. "Yay! You made it, boys." Ron said to his friends, "I think she's happy now," Jeremy whispered in an attempt to not let Susie hear him. "Don't say anything to get her upset." Dave said, "I still think this machine's a freak." She let out a shriek. "Ah! Boys!" Oh, and that timer's letting me know that I have to stop there or I will run out of recording time. If it was even recording in the first place, I don't know because I'm not looking at it. So, now you can go to part 3 of the park. Thank you.